Well, it probably goes without saying, but we have had a heck of a lot of Star Wars games released over the years. Since 1982, with the release of The Empire Strikes Back on the Atari 2600, there has been nothing but a steady stream of Star Wars interactive experiences for us to play and enjoy. There are actually over 100 different game releases across console games, PC games, arcade machines, pinballs, you name it. There has been such a bevy of content, and to help illustrate my point, I pulled out some of the actually all the OG Xbox releases that I own currently for Star Wars games, and it's just absolutely insane. I mean, we got Starfighter here, we've got Star Wars Obi-Wan, we've got Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith, we've got Star Wars Battlefront, Clone Wars, Battlefront 2, Knights of the Old Republic, and dude, I'm still missing 5. I don't even have them all, which is absolutely insane. Safe to say, there's a lot to choose from, and I feel like a lot of the games end up getting overlooked just because there are so many, and certain games, obviously Battlefront, KOTOR, the Jedi games get really put on a pedestal. So I wanted to take a look at 5. I picked out 5 games from my collection across different genres and platforms, and these are all games that I think are worth taking at least a look at, if not worthy of your collection. Let's get into it. Now, if you watch any other videos on this channel, you'll know I'm a bit of a PlayStation fan. This list is going to seem very PlayStation heavy. That's just partially because it's what I collect, but a lot of these games are available on other platforms, so I will mention that where applicable. We are going to get going here in chronological order, and to start, we've got a really great one. We got Star Wars Rebel Assault 2, The Hidden Empire. As you can see, it says the custom PlayStation version on here. This was also released on PC, so if you want to play it that way, that's an option. This was developed by LucasArts, and I believe this PlayStation version was ported by Factor 5, which is probably a familiar name to some of you in the Star Wars game community. They did other entries, especially on N64. I really love these games. This one I went in and played a few months ago, actually, and I had high hopes because I had played the OG Rebel Assault on 3DO a little bit prior. These are just, to me, like the epitome of early to mid 90s multimedia interactive game experiences. Lots of green and blue screen footage, cheesy acting, lots of FMVs. Essentially, these play like rail shooters, so that's kind of what you should expect going into this, although you do get a mix-up between different gameplay styles. There's on-foot sequences, there's vehicular sequences, but most of the gameplay involves pretty much on-rail shooting, which I am definitely a fan of. I like my on-rail shooters, so this was right up my alley. I will warn anybody that does want to play this. Overall, I think this game is really great, and it's pretty fair and balanced. There is a section with the Millennium Falcon, which sounds like it would be awesome, and it kind of is, but for some reason, it is probably far and away the hardest mission in this game, and it's fairly early. It's like the 3rd or 4th mission in. I do recommend that you just power through that mission. I know it's going to be kind of tough. The reason it's tough is because the Falcon in that mission it takes up a large portion of the gameplay screen, and a lot of that particular mission revolves around dodging the walls, the exterior walls around this cavern that you're going through, and it's very hard with the Millennium Falcon to try and weave your way through without hitting anything. I got fairly frustrated with that portion, but luckily I was able to get through it. The game definitely like really opens up after that, so I would say do what you can to stick through it. I believe there's also passwords too. Overall, this is just a really great early to mid 90s kind of gameplay experience. Like I said, very multimedia centric. You get a lot of FMVs and just cheesy acting that makes this a really fun little romp. It is only a couple hours long, but it's not a very expensive game. I got this for about $10. Definitely recommend this one. Now, this next one is gonna be a bit of a divisive pick. I know this going in, but I really do feel like this game gets a really bad rep, and it's not fully deserved, and that is Star Wars Masters of Teras Cassie. This is a 3D fighting game. This was developed in-house by LucasArts and released in 1997. This one is exclusive to the PS1, so that is unfortunately the only way of playing it. Some would probably say fortunately, but I want to defend this game just slightly. Now, I am going to say it is not a great game, do not mince my words, but I do not think it is the awful, horrible experience that people will lead you to believe. This game got lambasted by critics, and it continues to get a really bad reputation online, and I think it's unfortunate because because honestly, this is just like a really fun mid 5th gen 3D fighting game romp. I don't think it was meant to be taken too seriously, and I think because of the Star Wars name, people want to criticize every little minute detail. If you just play it like a standard 3D fighting game and don't take it all that seriously, like there's some cool stuff going on here. Each character is pretty lovingly recreated and you get some cool special abilities unique to each character. I don't think that this deserves the bashing that it gets. Is it a Tekken 3 level experience? Not even close, but I have played far worse fighters than this. Every time I boot this game up, it's entertaining. In fact, I've even done speed runs of it, even though it's a bit of a meme speed run. Like I don't know, I've just gotten so much enjoyment out of this game. I feel like it needed to be on this list. I'm just sick of people dogging on this one. I want to stand up. Fellow Masters of Teras fans, I'm with you. Now, if maybe I sort of lost you with that last one, hopefully I can reel you back in. This one I think is going to be hard to argue with. We've got Star Wars Demolition. This is the last PS1 game I have to showcase today. This was also released on the Dreamcast as it did come out in the year 2000. This is actually a vehicular combat game set in the Star Wars universe. This was done by Luxaflux, who, if you are aware of that name, probably know about the Vigilante 8 games. Yeah, they basically took their Vigilante 8 gameplay engine and adopted it to the Star Wars universe, and it works really, really well. This is quite a fun little vehicular combat game. Now, is it on the level of something like Twisted Metal? Maybe not quite, but I think it actually gets pretty darn close. You get a nice suite of different vehicles. You got the snow speeder, you got the land speeder, the ATSTs. You even got Boba Fett just riding around in a jetpack. That's personally my favorite character to play as in this. Nice host of weapons, doing damage is satisfying, running around these maps, collecting power-ups. It's a really fun time. It's pretty shallow, as is the case with most vehicular combat games, but I think if you like Twisted Metal, if you like Vigilante 8, I think this is definitely one worth checking out, especially if you are that and a Star Wars fan. Definitely a good one to grab. All right, now this is a bit of another one that might take some convincing, but I do want you to hear me out once again. I also, with this video, really wanted to illustrate how many different genres the Star Wars universe can operate in when it comes to video games. You know, we've gotten vehicular combat, we've gotten fighting, we've gotten rail shooting. Next up, we got a kart racer with Star Wars Super Bombad Racing. Now, I'm sure that, especially if you were aware of video games around this time and you were into the hobby and you saw this on store shelves, I would understand wanting to pass it up. This was actually done by Lucas Learning, which was like the educational branch of LucasArts. Yeah, there are definitely some art style choices done for this. Obviously, the bobblehead style big head characters with small bodies was a choice. It was definitely a choice that I know not everybody was a fan of, and yeah, visually it is very childlike, but honestly, I think this is kind of a fun kart racer. I know it's not going to be for everybody. I think if you give it a chance, again, now that this is another one that is cheaper than it was, this is one that, yeah, I would imagine the pill would be hard to swallow back in the day, but like, you got a nice set of tracks here. It's 10 tracks. You know, honestly, the handling is pretty good, and probably the highlight of this game, personally, to me, is the fact that there's actually two mechanics that are really neat. There is a jump mechanic, which is kind of rare for a kart racer, but you are in these, you know, hovercraft, so it makes sense. And you also get a turbo, which is pretty rad. So you can do these really cool turbo jumps. You can get some nice shortcuts going. It honestly becomes like almost like part kart racer, part platformer, which I think is really neat and gets really overlooked when people just want to bash on this game. Again, this is another one that I think if you're willing to give it a chance, you go in with expectations maybe not set so nearly so astronomically high like most Star Wars fans tend to. I think you can have some fun with this, especially if you're into the kart racing genre and you just want something that's a little fun. This is another one that I have done speedruns of. I liked it that much. If that tells you something, maybe give it a shot. Lastly, we are jumping way ahead here to actually a Switch release. I wanted to throw a bit of a modern one in, and also I wanted to get a pinball game in here because honestly, how often do I get to talk about pinball? We've got Star Star Wars Pinball on the Nintendo Switch. This is done by Zen Studios, who are pretty famous for their Pinball FX franchise. And essentially what this is a lot of the DLC Star Wars license maps that they made for probably Pinball FX3 or for, I'm not sure which one exactly, but essentially they bundled a whole bunch of tables together and put it together on this Switch release. And it's such a lovely, lovely set of tables. Zen is probably the gold standard when it comes to video pinball in the modern age. Their physics implementation, their table designs, the sound effects, the presentation, like all of it is just like absolutely top notch, knocking it out of the park. And it shows in this release. There are some awesome tables in this, some really cool effects also that can only really be done in a video pinball, which is personally what I look for when I'm playing pinball video games. As cool as it is sometimes to see just like a really well produced, faithful recreation of a real life table. Honestly, the video games that excite me the most are the ones that take advantage of the fact that it's a video game, right? So you get some really cool effects that otherwise couldn't be done, some really neat like multiple layer tables, things coming out of the play field, some awesome stuff that reminds you that, yeah, you're playing a video pinball game and it's rad. So I absolutely recommend this game. It is fan-freaking-tastic. Can't say enough good things about it. Check out Star Wars Pinball on the Switch. So guys, thank you for sticking around. That does it for my list of 5 games here today that I wanted to showcase. I do want to hear in the comments from you guys what Star Wars games are some of your personal favorites. And of course, we can talk about the big ones, the KOTORs, the Battlefronts, all that. But let's also give some of those lesser known Star Wars games a chance to shine, a chance to be heard and maybe recommended, and hopefully get some more people excited for some of the other games that they may have missed out on. I definitely think most people probably have either written off the games that I showed or just didn't even know they existed. So hopefully this helps some of y'all, and I'd love to hear what y'all have to say in the comments. Take care, everybody, and have a good one. Now, if maybe I sort of lost you with that last one, hopefully I can reel you back in.